Do you want to have more energy during the day? Do you want to sleep better? Watch the following amazing presentation that inspired me to write this app. It works.
To me, the two things that are most interesting about the brain, and I kind of alluded to one of them before, are our states. And states are just very powerful. So we know when we're in a good state, when we feel good. You could call that happiness if you want. When you feel creative, when you feel focused. But sometimes feeling focused is the worst thing if the thing that's in front of you is something that you don't want to be focused on. So we can't really talk about being focused. We need to put better definition on these things. And so states can be broadly divided into different categories, but I like to think of them in terms of what has traditionally been called arousal states. I don't want to discard with the notion of stress, right? Because you can be dead. I don't think anyone wants that. You can be in a coma. Nobody wants that. You can be sleepy, and that's a great state to be in when you want to go to sleep. And it's a terrible thing to not be in that state when you want to sleep or you need to sleep. We heard this morning about the importance of sleep. You can be alert and focused, which is great. And I think that's the state that most of us want to be in most of the time, unless we want to be asleep. And then we start ascending in kind of these levels of arousal that have to do with being kind of like heart pumping a little fast, breathing accelerates, and you start losing your ability to make really good adaptive decisions. You become self-conscious. Lots of these kinds of things start to escalate. And then at some point, that stress becomes often enough or severe enough that we would call that sort of chronic stress, and you start getting all the deleterious health effects and things like that. And then there's just like freaking out, right? So if you think about that continuum, really they're just sort of two states that I think would be so nice to be able to achieve. Like just as a start, like let's not make the task too hard. I think a really good goal would be a set of tools that would allow you and everybody else in the world to direct their states at will. And the two states I think we should aim for first in thinking about developing tools are alert and attentive, but so sort of alert and calm, or asleep. You know, if we could get to sleep when we want to and we could be alert and calm when we want to, I think we would do many things. I think we would improve what I'm vaguely referring to as mental health. And I think we would also eliminate a lot of the suffering and poor decisions that lead to poor behaviors in the world. And not to go off on too much of a tangent, but when you think about most of the things that lead to incarceration, most of the things that lead to really bad outcomes and trauma and PTSD, it's someone failed to regulate their state, often, right? And when you think about some of the best and most creative endeavors or some of the greatest creations that humankind has ever come up with, those were the reflection of sometimes shared states, sometimes individual states, but states come into play again. So states are important, regulating them would be great, and the two that I'd like to emphasize today, and I'll give you some tools that are grounded in science, although the science is still emerging, that are grounded in science that will help you access those states when you choose. So breathing and vision, I would argue, are the most accessible and most powerful levers on your state if you're going to do an inside-out manipulation, meaning you're going to shift your state from the inside out. A cup of coffee or a glass of wine is an outside-in. Those are also very effective, right? But for inside out, the questions are, how readily available are they? Vary. You've got your vision most all the time, and you've got your breathing most all the time. And those are the levers that you can use to manipulate and push your nervous system in the directions up or down that you want to go so that you can make more adaptive decisions, whatever those things are that you're confronting. So let's start with breathing. Respiration, it's absolutely clear, is a powerful lever on state. One, not our lab, but the Krasnow lab at Stanford discovered there's a direct link between the portion of your brain that controls emotion and the portion of your brain that controls breathing. And they run in both directions. Voluntary breathing can shift your emotions and your inner state. Your inner state can shift your breathing patterns. So that's sort of just fundamental. Without that in hand, you can't really believe that breathing is a powerful lever, but with that in hand, there's strong reason to believe it is. That not just that your breathing quickens when you get scared, but if you quicken your breathing, you can also get scared, right? Okay? So breathing has a couple different components. You can breathe through your nose, you can breathe through your mouth, and you got a couple nostrils, and so you can do that kind of variation. And then there's these different patterns of breathing. In general, most of the breathing protocols that you'll encounter either emphasize inhaling or emphasize exhaling across the breathing session, okay? And the ones that emphasize inhaling, not surprisingly, tend to bring more oxygen into your system and kind of ramp up your energy levels, get you into a higher arousal state. And the ones that emphasize exhales tend to bring you down a notch in what they call more parasympathetic mode, or kind of into more relaxed state, okay? And how well you can regulate or time or blow off your CO2, your carbon dioxide, is actually a pretty good indicator of how well you can buffer stress in the kind of breathwork regime. Now, I happen to be good friends with Wim Hof. Actually, my exploration of respiration work and breath work started a few years ago when I decided I wanted to work on emotion systems and internal states, and I literally just emailed Wim and said, I think what you're doing is amazing, mostly because what you do is amazing, but he's made all of what he does available to people through scientific study. So there's this beautiful paper in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, which is a legitimate journal, showing that the Wim Hof type breathing causes these increases in anti-inflammatory cytokines that literally allowed people to resist the effects of E. coli injections, flu, vomiting, fever. It's a really brilliant study. I had nothing to do with it. It's very, very cool. And so Wim said, come out to the Pyrenees, and where he was for the summer, and I learned some of these protocols from him. There is a principle here, which is that inhaling more oxygen than you exhale over a series of time can get you into kind of an upstate. I want to just kind of tip my hat to a really cool method. Another person I've never met, but I've been researching this area, a guy named Mark Devine, who works out of Encinitas, has developed this box breathing technique, which you would call a 1-1-1-1. It's about inhaling for a count of whatever, maybe 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, repeat to box. And box breathing, Mark's a former SEAL team guy, is a tool that people use to regulate their state and stay in these kind of balanced oxygen CO2 ratios to kind of stay in a plane of focus that allows you to be in good decision-making mode, right? Or good kind of adaptive mode for a physical endeavor. So box breathing is something you can pretty much do all the time, and kind of learning to rotate your breathing around a 1-1-1-1. So inhale, hold, exhale, hold. So now let's try kind of go in the other direction. All right, so some of us, we're kind of ramped up, or you don't want to be ramped up. You're heading in for a doctor's appointment. You want to be present and attentive for people in your life, and you're feeling too keyed up. You're carrying stress. What if you start to emphasize the exhale? The people vary here, but the overall effect tends to be one in which it's less autonomic arousal, like you want to go to sleep soon. On the kind of positive side, people that can regulate their state very well, moment to moment, are very, very powerful people in the world. And we tend to gravitate toward them for leadership, and we tend to gravitate toward them for partnership, if we're making good choices, and we tend to gravitate toward them for co-parenting. These are great assets to have, and yet we're never really taught how to do it. We're mainly taught how to do outside in, right? That's what we learn. So an inside-out tool that would be ready on demand would be extremely useful. That was the idea in mind.
I use Wim Hof in the mornings, box breathing throughout the day, and 4-7-8 just before bed. Enjoy.